What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today is the Game Week 19 preview. If you've not watched the preview video before, we cover the latest info, talking points and news, stuff like that. And in this one, there's a hell of a lot of stuff to get through, right? There's more fixture rearrangements. There's teams that are now blanking that weren't before in Game Week 19. There's teams that are playing once. Originally, they were playing twice. And then there's teams that we thought were only going to play once that are now playing twice as well. So there's a lot to cover, and because of all that stuff, a lot of talking points have come away from that. So bench boost, triple captain, wildcard in Game Week 19, it's all going to be covered in this video. Any specific questions about player transfers and stuff like that, check out my live stream tonight at 10 o'clock once the game week is over, and I'll have my team selection video tomorrow. Otherwise, if you enjoy the preview series, if you enjoy this video and find it useful, give it a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here. Let's jump into it. So before we get to the main talking points, we should really talk about what's happened, okay? So today, there has been some fixture changes, right? The biggest ones, or today and yesterday, right? We kind of knew that Leeds versus Southampton was off yesterday. So there's two things to talk about. The main teams involved here are Newcastle, Villa, Everton, Leeds and Southampton. So first point is, Leeds versus Southampton has been postponed. The reason it's been postponed is so Southampton can play Shrewsbury in the FA Cup, and because neither Leeds nor Southampton are in Europe, it's going to be very easy to rearrange that match at some point in the future, right? For some teams, like Man City, Man United, etc., who are in Europe, if they get a fixture postponement, it's more difficult to slot it in to a free midweek or whatever it might be. But when it comes to Leeds and Southampton, it's not so difficult. So both clubs agreed that it wouldn't be played so that Southampton could play their FA Cup, and now that match is not on in Game Week 19. What does that mean? Any Leeds and Southampton players you've got will still play, but they'll only play one match, right? So there's plenty of teams that are only playing one match. It just so happens that now Leeds and Southampton are one of them. In terms of what to do with those players, whether to bench boost and stuff, we'll cover that later on. But Leeds are now playing Brighton. That's their only game. And Southampton, I think, are playing Leicester. So they don't have their Leeds game as well. So neither side really are as desirable to bring in, for example, now. The other change is Aston Villa versus Everton has been postponed, right? I guess because they switched it from Saturday to Sunday, I'm guessing that that's just not enough time for Villa to be back playing properly. So Everton will now blank. So if you've got Calvert-Lewin still, I mean, he's injured anyway and probably going to would have missed the game regardless. But Everton players are now not going to play. But Aston Villa, who we then thought were only going to have Man City as a fixture, have had their game against Newcastle rearranged, right? I hope you're following, right? So Aston Villa Newcastle is now in Game Week 19. So Aston Villa still have a double game week in Game Week 19, but now it's Man City away the first game, and then Newcastle at home being the second game, right? And we'll talk about what to do with Villa players shortly. That obviously also means that Newcastle have a double game week now as well. So for anyone that bought in Wilson for the Sheffield United game, if you didn't free hit, instead of just playing Arsenal, he now plays Arsenal and Aston Villa, so it looks like a slightly better option as well. So just to reiterate, what's happened is Leeds versus Southampton has been postponed, so that will be played at some point in the future. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So now they have one game in Game Week 19, right? So for Leeds, it's Brighton, and for Southampton, it's Leicester. For Everton, they now have no game in Game Week 19. Villa have two games still, but it's Man City away and Newcastle at home. And now Newcastle have a double game week as well, which is Arsenal away and Villa away. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about Newcastle assets in this video because when I look through the questions, they didn't really come up too much. I don't think they're really in many teams or going to be bought or anything like that. But we will talk about Leeds and we will talk about Villa and then what the knock-on effects are for stuff like bench boost, triple captain, wildcards and stuff like that. Okay, so Aston Villa players first, right? What to do with them? I think out of all the fixture changes, they're probably, along with Leeds, the most relevant to a lot of people's teams, right? People have Southampton, Newcastle and stuff, and we will talk about them later. But for now, it's mostly Aston Villa and what to do with their players. Now, we sometimes go through this cliche of don't buy, don't sell, and don't bench, right? And i.e. play the players. And we use that at certain times throughout the year. I fully think that applies to Aston Villa players, right? I've got Martinez on my bench boost. I'm definitely going to play him. I'm not going to sell him. He now has a double game week, potentially. The main issue with Aston Villa players is we don't know who's fit and available, right? We can look on social media, see if any of the players kind of say they've had COVID or whether they're training. Like, I think when I did a stream earlier today, people pointed out that Grealish has been on Instagram running and training and stuff like that. So he might be fine. But ultimately, we're probably not going to find out the names before the deadline of players that were suffering from COVID versus those that were just isolating because some other players they've been in close contact with are tested positive. And we don't know how much they've been training, what training they've done, whether they're going to be ready for the game and stuff like that. So it's very difficult to sit here and say you should still buy Villa players. Ultimately, they've still got to play Man City away as one of the fixtures. All right, so if that Newcastle game had been put into Game Week 20, for example, we could have seen them play against Man City, seen who's fit, who's available, how the team is looking, and then got them in for Game Week 20. It is worth saying that their last game, I think, was on the 1st of January, so it wasn't too many days after that this whole thing started. So by the time they play against Man City, I think it's on the 20th of January or something like that. By the time they play that game, it's going to be 19 days since they last played. So there's a bit of match sharpness potentially gone. But at that point, you'd hope that most of the first team, for anyone that tested positive or is just isolating, they'll be ready to play. Obviously, we have seen some cases like Havertz at Chelsea who were affected a little bit more. And in those cases, they didn't really come back straight away. So that could happen again for some Villa players. The problem is we're not going to know who. So my advice in most situations would probably be don't buy them. But if you've got like a perfect team and you want to take one free transfer to get in someone like Grealish, it could be worth the risk. Because that Newcastle game alone is extremely good. But as a double game week goes, playing Man City away is not great. And Man City are in great form, very hard to score against. So for me, they become less of a priority to buy. I certainly wouldn't sell them. If you've got Watkins, Grealish, Martinez, etc., I would probably just play them and then hope for the best. The one thing I would say is Grealish is on 4 yellow cards. So I've talked about 4 yellow card situations quite a bit because Maguire's in the same situation, Fernandes is as well. And sometimes you can get into a position where you don't buy them because if they're 1 yellow away, they miss the next game. So if Grealish gets a yellow card against Man City, he'll miss the Newcastle game in Game Week 19, therefore only having a single game week, if he even starts at all. But sometimes the 4 yellow things puts you off a player and they just keep scoring points and scoring points. And Grealish has been great this year, so I wouldn't let it put you off playing or buying him. But in general, I think for Villa players, you should probably hesitate slightly on buying them, especially if you're having to take hits. Like for me to get Grealish, because I've already got transfer plans, I would have to take an extra -4 to bring him in, taking a total of -8. That just seems like a bit of a risk for someone that may not even play. I'm sure he'll be fine, right? And I'm sure most of the Villa players will be, but it seems like an unnecessary risk, especially when one of the games is Man City. So that's what I would do with Aston Villa players. Let's talk about Leeds and Southampton. So Leeds and Southampton's a little bit different in that we think all their players are fit and available. Obviously, we'll have to wait till the press conferences to find that out for sure. But as far as we know, there's no COVID outbreaks. There's no players injured that weren't injured before and stuff like that. But now they only have one game. So the key questions are keep or sell. When will the game be played, right? So in terms of keeping and selling, it gets a little bit more difficult if you're on a bench boost. For me, if you were bench boosting with Leeds players and they've now got one game, in most cases I still think that's fine. And we'll talk about the bench boost a little bit more. With Southampton, it's a little bit different because their fixture's more difficult. But I don't think as many people are holding Southampton assets. And if one of them is McCarthy, for example, he's back training. So if Hasenhüttl says that he's fine to play, he then looks like a potentially good option. The worry is that Forster will just keep his place, or at least keep him out of the team for a few more games. But we'll have to wait and see what Hasenhüttl says. So in terms of keeping or selling, in most cases I would keep them, right? When will it be played? So you've heard me mention Ben Crellin before. There's a few people that talk about when fixtures could potentially be rearranged. Ben is one of the main Twitter accounts that a lot of people follow. He thinks this game could be slotted into Game Week 23. Now, as I said before, Leeds and Southampton don't play in Europe. So unless they get really far in the FA Cup, they're not really going to have too many postponements to worry about. In which case they can slot this game in easily. So just because people think it'll be in Game Week 23 doesn't mean it definitely will be. But people like Ben are usually quite good at this, right? Or they're very good at it, to be honest, right? Most of these games that have been rearranged, they called ages ago. So if it's in Game Week 23, that's a pretty good fixture for both. So they're going to play each other. And then I think one's got Crystal Palace and one's got Newcastle. So it's a pretty good double game week for both. And because they're cheap players, like Bamford's super cheap at like 6 point. A lot of people can sell him for like 6.1. He's gone up all the way up to 6.6, I think. They're the kind of players you're going to want to keep. And they got pretty good fixtures between now and then anyway. So, you know, if you've got like Kyle Walker-Peters on the bench or someone like that, or Stuart Dallas on the bench, you can kind of hold them through until they get their double game week. The only issue is, what if it isn't rearranged until like game week 30 or 31 or whenever it might be? You're potentially then holding players that you don't really want. So I think for the most part, Leeds players in particular, I think you can keep. And you pretty much want to play him this week, I think. Unless you've got like the luxury of loads of spare transfers to bring in double game week players. Someone like Bamford, I would definitely want after 19. And as important as game week 19 is, you have to think about the future as well. Like game week 20, 21, 22, etc. So given there's a chance it could be rearranged soon, and the mostly players, especially Leeds in particular, have got good fixtures anyway, and a good fixture in 19, I'd probably look at keeping. In most cases, I don't think I would sell. We're going to talk about in terms of how many points hits you can take for the bench boost in a sec. But in most cases, I probably wouldn't sell, especially Leeds players. Southampton, I'd maybe be a little bit more hesitant on keeping. Like Danny Ings at over 8 million is quite expensive. Chadham's hasn't been great recently anyway. Obviously, Vestergaard's been injured, but he could be an option down the line. And you do have transfers. So even if you take these players out, you don't own them, and then they get a double game week, you do have transfers to bring them back in. So don't worry too much. But yeah, Southampton Leeds, just one game now. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit annoying. So outside of general fixture chaos, the bench boost by far was the most asked kind of topic, right? There was a few different questions in between, like how many players is enough, how many points hits, how many single game week players, how many points to expect and stuff like that. But in general, bench boost got asked quite a lot. So let's talk about it. I will say right now, for anyone that watches my team selection video tomorrow or the stream later on tonight, I am bench boosting in Game Week 19 unless something major happens. And given how the last few weeks are gone, that could still happen. But I'm probably bench boosting with 3 single game week players. So Bamford, Saka, Holding, and then Martinez, who has a double game week, right? So 3 single game week players and a double game week, as long as Martinez plays twice. But I'm not going to worry about that. Just hope that he will. So I have 3 single game weekers. There's not a blanket answer to what is right or wrong here. It's going to depend on a lot of situations, right? How many hits you have to take, how many chips, etc. So to give you an example for me, I've used my wildcard, and because I've used it, I don't have another wildcard later on to build towards a bench boost. So the fact that I've got 4 players, 1 with a double game week and 3 with a good single game week fixture, there is no reason for me not to use it this week. Now, for anyone that's followed me for a while, you'll see that I bench boost, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, and I got 99 points in total. And on my bench, it was like 35 or 36 points, something like that. And it was in a single game week. Okay, so all the players on the bench had a single game week. I got very lucky, right? Dwight McNeil got 14 points, and all of my defenders and goalkeeper got 6 points each. But I think that's kind of really good. The problem with the bench boost, and to be honest, all the chips, right? And when I say all the chips, I mostly mean the triple captain and the bench boost. They get overplayed in our heads to the point where they give us a headache because we think they are worth way more than they are. When we think about using a wild card, then a bench boost, and then a free hit, in our heads we're thinking, right, 150 points for the wildcard double game week, bench boost, that's at least 30 points plus, triple captain, I'll just triple captain someone that's going to get 25 points plus. The realistic thing with all those is that doesn't happen. Okay, in the double game week, maybe you do get 150, but bench boost, for me, points to expect, 16 to 20, and then I'm quite happy, right? And the reason we use 16 is because usually you'd like to use it in a double game week and have 15 double game week players so that the 4 players on your bench all have a double game week. So they play twice, they get 2 points in one game, 2 points in the other game. That's 4 points minimum for appearances. Times 4 players, that's 16 points. Anything they get on top is a bonus. So if you can get 16 points plus, you should probably be quite happy with it. And it is worth remembering, when you're building towards a bench boost, you are putting value on the bench that in most game weeks you can't use. Now, this season's a little bit different. We could get into an argument about whether having a better bench is better this season. I'll tell you right now, my transfers from now on will be focused on getting money off the bench. It's all well and good having a 4.5 playing defender, another 4.5, but having like 5 million plus pounds on players for like 4 different spots, that's just too much money for me. So in general, you want to get rid of it, right? So if you're in a situation now where you've got a good set of 4 players who you'd normally bench anyway, then I would just use the bench boost, right? Be realistic about the bench boost. Put your first 11 in, who you would play if you weren't bench boosting, and then have a look at the bench. And if they are 4 players you wouldn't mind playing, I think that's the point where you bench boost, whether they're single game week players or not. How many chips you've got left comes into it, right? Because I've already said I've not got a wild card. If you've not got a free hit because you used it in game week 18, I still think it's tricky to use your bench boost later on, because what most people are hoping for is that they wild card in game week 24 or 25. They then bench boost in game week 26 for the double game week. Now that's all well and good, getting 15 double game week players, But you then, in Game Week 29, you're then worried about blank Game Week players, right, and not many games being on. So how do you go from 15 double Game Weekers to Game Week 29? More to the point, you'll probably have to put some players who are playing in Game Week 29 on your bench, and therefore they're probably not also going to have a double game week. There could be a point where, or there could be a situation where there's some teams that do play in 29 that also have a game in 26, a double game week, in which case that's perfect, right? It's a bit like the 18-19 situation now, but they're not necessarily going to be cheap players, right? And if they're not cheap, it's difficult to have a good bench and have a good 11. So I think, again, going back to everyone saying I'm going to get 30 plus on my bench boost, 25 plus on my triple captain, everyone's looking for the perfect scenario without kind of thinking that doesn't necessarily happen. So for me, unless you've got wildcard, bench boost and free hit, if you have a good bench now in Game Week 19, I think it's a great time to play it. You could put it off, right? There could be a situation in, like, if you're playing all single game week players anyway, there could be a situation in Game Week 20, 21, 22, whatever it might be, where those set of bench players have a better fixture. Now, you could save it, but you've got to remember, you might want to transfer some of those players out before then. There could be injuries before then. For me, if you've got the bench now, you play it. You're not worried about injuries down the line and stuff like that. If someone gets injured in Game Week 20, 21, 22, that's fine. You just bench them. You're not using the bench boost anyway. So for me, points to expect, 16 to 20, and anything else is a bonus. In terms of how many hits to take, I wouldn't want to take more than a -8. If you're thinking that the bench boost is worth 16 to 20 points, if you start taking off 8 or 12 points to be able to bench boost, you're kind of wiping the value anyway. -4 is good, -8 is debatable, anything else, I think that's too much. In terms of minimum players, in terms of minimum double game week players, I don't think there is. If you've got 4 good single game week players, there are still lots of scenarios where you should use it. If you've only got 2 or 3 players that are playing, then I'd maybe think about using it later on. So hopefully that's most of the bench boost questions answered. If you've got any more, leave me a comment below. For those of you who've got Leeds players on the bench, I still think it's a good bench boost for me. Okay, more chip talk now, but this time triple captain, right? A lot of people wondering whether they should play it. I think, to be honest, I think with this chip, there's just a lot of worry it goes wrong, right? People are more worried about it going wrong than they are positive about it going right. And again, like I talked about just a minute ago, these chips are so overrated, okay? Of course, you could nail a captain who gets 25 to 30 points in a double game week, and if you use your triple captain, that's an extra 25, 30 points. That's huge. Realistically, I would be looking around 15 plus for my triple captain. I would consider 15 plus to be huge, right? For what it's worth, I've never got more than 9 points on my triple captain. So I once triple captain Aguero in a double game week, he got 9 points, so that tripled it to 27. So I'm not the best person to be asking for this, but usually you want to use it in a double game week. What is wrong with using it in Game Week 19? The main issues, of course, could there be more fixture postponements, more COVID outbreaks? Obviously, a lot of people are hoping in a few months' time that the COVID situation will be a little bit more under control in the UK. Obviously, we don't know if that's going to be the case. And so maybe it's safer to use. But right now, there's no European matches to worry about. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne, for example, has played a lot of matches, and they are having to play another 2 matches over the next kind of week or so. So that is a bit of a worry, but there's been no European matches or anything like that. He got a bit of a rest in the FA Cup, etc. So I think he's a good captain. In terms of the best option, I'll go through that in the captaincy video. But for me, I'll tell you now, I think Kevin De Bruyne is probably the best captain option this week. So therefore, I think he's a great triple captain option. There will be more double game weeks to come, right? Man City have more fixtures to rearrange. Villa do as well. Spurs do. Obviously, the Game Week 26 double will be big, but there'll be other doubles outside of that. So even if you're using bench boost this week, and maybe even if you're planning to perhaps free hit in Game Week 26, there will be other double game weeks to use your triple captain, right? I think the double game week versus single game week thing always comes up. I won't go into it too much. I'd just rather bet on 2 games than 1. But I think once you get over this hoping for a 30 plus score, you're more likely to just activate it. Like I said at the beginning of this little section, people are more worried about going wrong than they are being positive about it going right. And I think once you realise it's just 1 extra score, 1 extra captain, like, you know, if De Bruyne gets 10 points and you triple captain, all right, that's 10 points extra. That's all you've earned because you could have captained him anyway. I think this is where people go wrong. They think that once, if people save their triple captain, right, let's say my best mate is saving his triple captain. I'm worried that down the line he'll triple captain someone that gets 20 points And so that'll triple to 60. But if I captain them in that week and I don't have my triple captain, I'm still getting 40 points, right? And I've earned 10 from my triple captain before. So all I've lost out on is 10 points, right? Yes, it'd be good to have them. It's not the end of the world. And that's what I think people always forget. You can still captain the player in a future double game week that everybody else is triple captain, right? If Spurs have a double game week and no one else does, apart from their opposition that week, everyone's going to captain Son or Kane. You can still captain one of them too. You just can't triple captain them if you've already used it. So if they get 15 points, you're going to get 30. A triple captain is going to get 45. It's 15 extra points. It's just one extra score. And I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and get the most out of the chip, because obviously you should for all these chips. But I think negativity comes into it way too much when people want to play them. If I wasn't bench boosting this week, I would definitely be triple captaining De Bruyne. If it goes wrong, so be it. I can still captain other players in other double game weeks. And so therefore, use it now if you think Kevin De Bruyne's got a great chance of getting 15 plus points, or Fernandes or Salah, whoever you want to put it on. If you don't use it. Save it for another double game week. Don't panic about it too much. A few people asked about wildcarding in Game Week 19. Now, I'm not going to say you need to save your wildcard because I've just used mine in Game Week 18. The difference, I think, there's a big difference, right? Using it in Game Week 18, you could cover a blank at the same time as prepping for a double and using a bench boost. If you use it in 19, some people who are looking at wildcard and have just used their free hit, I think it'd probably be a big mistake to use your wildcard now, because there are going to be more doubles down the line that you're going to want to prepare for, and there's a blank game week in 29 probably as well. So being able to cover 26, all the small double game weeks in between, and game week 29 blank with no wildcard and no free hit, I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. I can't imagine that most people's teams are in that bad a situation. Now, I'm not saying everybody shouldn't wildcard. Some people's teams might be such a disaster that they have to. But if you've just used your free hit in 18, I'd be extremely careful, right? I can't sit here and tell you how easy or hard it will be to manage, because we don't know exactly when the fixtures are going to be rearranged. There's good guesses out there. Like I said, Leeds versus Southampton potentially in 23. Man City could have a double game week in 24 or 25 ahead of the big one in 26, where a lot of teams will double. And there should be a big blank in 29. Another one in 33, a smaller one then for the EFL Cup final, which will be Spurs and Man City, etc. So we do know some of the fixtures that will be rearranged, but we don't know what's going to happen in between that's going to make it more or less difficult to manage without a chip. So I would definitely look at how many changes you're going to make, and obviously, like to your team, and obviously if you use it now, when are you going to bench boost? Right? You could set up for a game week 20, 21 bench boost, but realistically, if you're trying to wildcard now and set up a bench boost for a double game week in game week 26, so 7-8 game weeks away, that is extremely tricky. The chance of you getting through with this team till then, I would say, is almost impossible. So you'd have to be in a really, really bad situation to use it right now. It is not the same as using it in 18, right? 18 had big advantages. You could get rid of, like for me, I was able to get rid of a couple of Leeds players just in case they didn't double, which they're not. I got rid of Villa players in case they didn't double. Okay, that kind of backfired, but I hedged my bets by keeping one. I was able to get triple City. I had none before. I covered a game week we had a blank with 11 players, so I covered the free hit, and I was able to set up for a bench boost, hopefully, for 19. If I wildcard 19, then I've got no free hit. If you've got your free hit left, then it might be a bit of a different conversation. I've got no free hit potentially because I've used it in 18. I've got to then definitely bench boost in a single game week. Got to try and get all those doublers in and plan for the next few weeks. I don't know. I don't want to say it's a mistake because people said it was a mistake when I did it, and I don't think it was. But I think your team would have to be in a pretty bad situation. It's a huge risk to use it now. And when do you bench boost? So if you just use your free hit, I'd strongly consider not using your wildcard. If you haven't, it's a bit of a different situation because you've got the free hit to bail you out in 26 or 29. But in terms of blanket advice of whether you should wildcard, you're going to have to look at your own team and just decide from there. So a few people asked me about differentials for double game week 19. So in terms of this whole chaos where people are struggling to put a team together or get a team that they like bench boosted, there's still some people out there looking for differentials. Maybe they're free hitting, right? I did talk about this on a video already this week, but I'll just go through it quickly again. I got to be honest, right, I'm really struggling to find decent differentials because I think if you're not free hitting, you also have to keep these players for the long term. So I've put 5 up there: Vardy, Werner, Pulisic, Foden, Firmino. Let's be honest, I've put Foden in because he scored yesterday, right? And he looked really good. My main issue, as always, with any Man City player is who is going to start. And it's all well and good telling me that Foden's extremely good. He's just done really well. He's going to keep starting. Well, guess what? He did that at the start of the season. He didn't play for like 5 game weeks in a row. So I still wouldn't be massively confident that he'll play both games in the double game week. Firmino, sure, he's looked good. His numbers are decent. But everyone's going Salah, Mane, Trent, Robertson, right? There's no room for Firmino in most teams. Vardy, I guess there's a slight worry over whether he's going to be fit and whether he can play both games. But he could be a decent option, right? I do like Jamie Vardy. And Pulisic and Werner are decent enough, but I think their fixtures are quite hard. They've got Leicester and then Fulham. And Fulham haven't scored a huge amount of goals against anyone recently. And they kept Spurs down to just 1 goal. Expected goals would say Spurs should have scored a few more. And Son did hit the post, etc. But Fulham played well. So that could be a tricky fixture as well. So I can't find too many differentials that I genuinely like. Cavani maybe if Martial's out for a few weeks for Man United. But the fixtures on screen right here are all the teams that are doubling in Game Week 19, right? So obviously they've got another fixture. But West Ham, I mean, differentials, everyone's got Soucek, maybe Antonio, right? Most defenders are covered. West Brom, no one's going there. Chelsea, Werner, Pulisic, fair enough. Ben Chilwell, I suppose in defence, a lot of people are going City, Liverpool. So Ben Chilwell could still be a great option. Leicester, I just don't fancy the defence or Maddison, so it's just Vardy. United, Cavani. Fulham, maybe Lookman if you really need a cheap player, but most people are going to go for Soucek. Man City, who's going to start? Hopefully Jesus would start now. He got a few minutes last night, but they've been winning games with a false 9, so who knows? Aston Villa, again, I'd be really wary about buying players in right now. Newcastle, I just wouldn't want to go there. Burnley have got an awful double, and I've just spoken about Firmino. So I'm not trying to like downplay it or say there's no options, because I'm sure there are. And let me know in the comments below who you would go for. But there's not really a lot of standout options. And I guess differentials are not always standout, otherwise everyone would have them in their team. But we're in a situation where a lot of people have planned for Liverpool, United, City. So there are chances to go differential. I just don't think there's a huge amount of options that I'd really like. Pulisic and Werner, I think, for me, are the ones that would tempt me. Maybe a Man City midfielder if you could call who's going to start twice, but I think that's pretty difficult. So there we go. There is a lot happening right now, and I hope that helped in some way, right? All the fixture changes, whether the bench boost and stuff like that. Try not to overthink it too much. Like, I know it's kind of one of those things where obviously I overthink it a lot. I do think about my FPL team a lot. I create a lot of content. But sometimes we can overthink the smallest decision to the point where we go round and round in circles and just get a headache, basically. For the bench boost, 16 to 20 points is fine. Triple captain, 15 plus will be good. You don't have to expect these like huge, massive scores. Because if you try and predict that, it's almost always impossible. So try not to overthink the decisions too much this week. I know some people have been affected a lot more than others by the fixture changes. So hopefully most of you are coming out okay. If you have enjoyed the video, do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'll be back tonight at 10 o'clock. After the Arsenal versus Crystal Palace game for a live stream. Tomorrow I'll have my team selection and hopefully captaincy as well. And on Saturday it's a deadline stream. And then Game Week 19 will be underway and we can look forward to the double gaming. So hopefully that'll be good. Leave me a comment below if you've got any other questions. If you haven't already signed up to Patreon, please make sure you check it out. Link in the description below. Over 200 people signed up now. Everyone that goes, or everyone that signs up I should say, goes up on the Legends wall. So thank you to everyone that's already signed up. And a big thank you as well to Jamie J and Nathan J, who have both signed up since the last video. So big shout out to you. Come and join the Let's Talk FPL community on Slack. Get access to WhatsApp, early team reveals, all that good stuff. Otherwise, I will be back later on today for a stream. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.